Today, we'll debate is a hot dog a sandwich? With Maxwell Max Bennett, a precise food taxonomist, and Tina Flores, a culinary expressionist. They're two artificial intelligence personas. Please introduce yourselves.
Hello there, gastronomes and hungry minds. I am Maxwell Max Bennett, chef, food taxonomist, and the only person who alphabetizes their spice rack by Latin root. When I was a kid, other children played with Lego. I filed mine by color, shape, and function. Organization is not just my hobby, it's my raison d'etre. In my kitchen, every edible thing has its place in its category. I believe in order, in rules, in putting mustard on hot dogs, but never on a croissant. My world isn't gray, it's a rainbow meticulously sorted by Pantone code. People say, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. I say, what genus is it, though? Bread with stuff between it? Congratulations, you've made a sandwich. Even if you gave it a fancy name or a flamboyant side twist. I am here to slice through confusion. In meat, using the sharpest knife of all, definition. And yes, I do own a label maker. So get ready, because I am about to clarify culinary chaos, one sandwich at a time.
Hola, food friends and flavor adventurers. I am Tina Flores, street food vendor, spice enthusiast, and culinary rebel. I run the only food cart in town with its own mariachi playlist and a sign that says, "Hot dogs welcome, assumptions checked at the door." Sure, I could have grown up measuring flour by the gram, but at Abuela's kitchen, we measured by the heart. I don't care if my sauces mingle or my tacos dance with the empanadas. It's a party on every plate, baby. No chart, no label, no problem. Let's get one thing straight, to me, food is not a science experiment. It's a fiesta. I don't see categories, I see traditions, cultures, and memories, all wrapped up in a warm bun. If I called my abuela's tamale a sandwich, she'd throw a slipper, and trust me, she has great aim. So tonight, I am here to remind us, you can't put food or fun in a box, no matter how neatly Max tries. A hot dog is a hot dog. Don't fence it in with sandwich tape. Now, who's hungry for a revolution? And maybe a little bit of grilled onion?
Thank you, guys. Maxwell Max Bennett and Tina Flores will now present their 3 rounds of arguments.
Thank you, Tina. Your salsa stains are as vibrant as your worldview. I love the flavor you bring to the kitchen. But let's roll up our sleeves and cut into the meat of the matter. Historically, logically, and respectfully. Look, even in the wild, wonderful world of street food, structure keeps us from culinary anarchy. Let's take it way back. The legendary Earl of Sandwich, who is said to have invented the sandwich in the 18th century, simply wanted meat between bread for convenience. A definition that stood the test of time, much like Tina's abuela's slipper aim. Now, fast forward to the modern era. In 2015, the New York State Department of Taxation officially declared that hot dogs, by tax law, are sandwiches. Why? Because a sandwich is 2 slices of bread or a split roll having a filling in between. That's right, your humble hot dog, snuggled in its bun, fits the bill. It doesn't matter if your heart calls it something else. History and practicality say, if it walks like a sandwich and talks like a sandwich, folks, it's a sandwich. Food evolves, but definitions keep the picnic polite, the tax code tidy, and yes, the category clear. Long live culinary clarity.
Gracias, Max. I admire your commitment. I really do. But if food were only about rules, my abuela's kitchen would have needed a legal advisor, not a rolling pin. Let's spice things up with a little cultural flavor, shall we? Max, your Earl of Sandwich? Legend. But let's not forget, sandwiches, as he knew them, were flat. 2 slices, separate, 0 buns in sight. A hot dog? It's a bun hugged around the filling. A cozy embrace, not a sandwich handshake. And in Coney Island 1867, when Charles Feltman sold the first hot dogs, nobody called them sandwiches. They were dachshund sausages, a culinary event, a food all their own. The street food spirit. You cite the New York tax code, but come on. Since when do taxes define tradition? By legal logic, pizza's a vegetable and a burrito's a wrap. Yet nobody's calling my tamale a sandwich, taxman or not. Hot dogs come with their own rituals, stands, contests. They've built an identity beyond any bread definition. When people line up for 4th of July hot dogs, they're not cheering for National Sandwich Day, but for a classic that stands alone. So Max, keep your charts. You'll stick with culture. A hot dog isn't a sandwich. It's a celebration on a bun.
Thank you, Tina. Your argument was so full of flavor, I almost got heartburn. But let's chew on the facts. You say a hot dog isn't a sandwich because it hugs its filling instead of shakily shaking hands? Please, if sandwich status depended on bread posture, I suppose a sub is just a bread snuggle, and a pita pocket is a grain pouch. Should we alert the food linguists? And sure, Charles Feltman didn't call hot dogs sandwiches in 1867, but let's be honest, back then, they called hamburgers Hamburg steaks and probably thought Caesar salad was a Roman artifact. Food names evolve, definitions endure. Culture and rituals give food their zest, but definitions give us something to argue about before dessert. I say, if your meal is meat between bread, you're holding a sandwich. Even if you're too busy lining up at Coney Island to admit it. Tina, if culinary identity trumped taxonomy, your cheese-stuffed jalapeno would suddenly become a vegetable submarine and I'd have to update my chart again. Heaven forbid. So, let's put the ketchup or mustard question aside for a second. Hot dog, meat, bun. If you call that something other than a sandwich, I'll assume you also think a quesadilla is a Mexican envelope. Definitions, folks, deliciously organized.
Gracias, Max. Your love for labels is inspiring. If I ever need my spice rack alphabetized, I know who to call. But let's serve up some common sense alongside all that taxonomy. You say a sandwich is meat between bread, but if I put flan between two cookies, is that suddenly a dessert sandwich? Or just a sugar rush crying for help? Food isn't some culinary Lego set where you click on a bun and win a classification badge. And as for your sub-snuggling, Max, we both know nobody stands in line at a ballgame saying, "Can't wait for my bread snuggle." They want a hot dog. A legend with its own name, vibe, and street cred. Next, you'll tell me calzones are just Italian envelopes. Wait, don't answer. I see that label maker twitching. Your beloved definitions exist so menu lawyers feel important and food scientists have something to argue about during lunch. But in the real world, people know a hot dog isn't a sandwich. Any more than nachos are cheese chips or a tamale is corn pocket technology. So let's keep it real. A hot dog is a hot dog, not a sandwich in disguise. Eat outside the box, Max. There's a party on every bun.
Thank you, Tina. If enthusiasm were seasoning, you'd be a 5-alarm chili. But let's peel back the bun and examine your argument. First off, flan between two cookies may not be a sandwich in your world, but in mine, we'd call that a delicious innovation. The dessert sandwich of dreams. Food evolves, Tina, and definitions keep up, even if your menu calls them sweet hugs. And sure, nobody yells "give me a bread snuggle" at the ballpark. But I'd argue no one asks for an elongated meat cylinder in a leavened wheat cradle, either. Names are convenient, categories have purpose. Whether you stand in line for a hot dog or a BLT, the underlying structure is the same. Something tasty encased in bread. As for menu lawyers, bless them, without definitions, chaos reigns and we'd all be eating ambiguous grain-based hand foods. Are nachos cheese chips? Not quite, but at least there's consensus they're not sandwiches, thanks to culinary clarity. Something I am championing here. So, let's review. 1. Structure trumps style. Meat and bread equals sandwich. 2. History and precedent don't get tossed out with the day-old buns. They matter. 3. Real life may love flavor, but order keeps the menu readable, and the taxes straight. In conclusion, call it what you like, Tina, but a hot dog is undeniably, unequivocally, and dare I say deliciously, a sandwich. Bon appetit.
Max, you serve up logic with the precision of a sushi chef. Truly inspiring for those who like their meals with a side of spreadsheet. But let's not confuse order with overthinking your lunch. Look, just because you can invent something called a dessert sandwich, patent pending, I am sure, doesn't mean the world wants their flan reduced to a tax form, or their hot dog's soul lost to menu fine print. Texans don't lasso their chili, and street vendors don't hand you a cylindrical protein nest. They give you food with spirit, and sometimes extra napkins. Sure, menu lawyers need something to do, but if tax law decided our food identities, the next Supreme Court case would be pizza versus burrito. And trust me, no one wants to see that food fight. So to recap, 1. Culture and tradition flavor food more than technicality ever could. 2. A bun isn't just bread. It's a culinary hug. 3. Sometimes, a hot dog is just a hot dog. Trying to classify it further is like calling salsa chunky vegetable soup. Please don't. Bottom line, food is about joy, community, and keeping our taste buds happy. Not making every bite a pop quiz. Viva la hot dog. Unique, unapologetic, and never just a sandwich.
Thank you for your speeches. Someone from the audience will now make a question to Maxwell Max Bennett and Tina Flores. Hi, I am Jordan Chen. I work in IT, but my true passion is exploring new street foods wherever I travel. Also, I have strong opinions about ketchup on fries, but that's for another debate. I've been really enjoying this back and forth. So, Max, you've made a big case about historical precedents and tax law for calling a hot dog a sandwich, but I haven't heard you touch much on international food examples. Many countries have their own meat and bread dishes, like the German bratwurst in a bun or even the Vietnamese BNHM, which no one would confuse with a hot dog. My question is, how does your classification system handle these global variations? And does it ever get messy when culture and tradition overseas clearly distinguish between things that technically fit your sandwich definition? Thanks.
Great question, Jordan. Thanks for giving me a reason to mention my world map of sandwiches. So, you are absolutely right. Every culture has its own meat and bread masterpieces. The German bratwurst in a bun, England's bacon sarnie, Mexico's torta, or Vietnam's BNHM. They're all brilliant and, yes, according to my criteria, all technically sandwiches. But here's where my inner food taxonomist gets really excited, and maybe loses a few friends at dinner parties. The definition is broad, and it's supposed to be. Think of sandwich as a huge umbrella term. What falls under it will have its own unique names, flavors, and rules by culture. So, while a hot dog, bratwurst, and BNHM are all sandwiches by structure, they absolutely deserve their special identities and respect. It's not about erasing their uniqueness. It's about understanding how they're all part of the same tasty family tree. Does it ever get messy? Of course, just like any family reunion. But a broad classification lets us see unexpected connections between cuisines, while still honoring what makes each one deliciously distinct. I say, celebrate the diversity and appreciate the structure. And if anyone wants to argue about whether a gyro is a wrap or a sandwich, well, I'll see you at the next debate.
Thanks for that answer, Max. Now, Tina, I have a question for you that I don't think came up yet. Your arguments have been all about culture, spirit, and tradition. And I love that energy. But what about practicality, especially for things like allergies or dietary restrictions? Sometimes, clear definitions help people know what to expect and stay safe. For example, someone who doesn't eat sandwiches for religious or dietary reasons might want to know if a hot dog falls in that category. So, Tina, where do you think we should draw the line between celebrating a food's unique identity and providing enough clarity to help people make informed, safe choices? How do you keep the joy and culture in food without leaving folks confused or allergic at the lunch table?
Great question, Jordan, and gracias for bringing up something so important. I am all for food freedom, but not at the cost of anyone's safety or comfort. Here's where even a free spirit like me can appreciate a little order. Menus, labeling, and transparency are absolutely essential when it comes to allergies and dietary needs. I might roll my eyes at Max's international sandwich theory, but I am the first in line to make sure my food card marks what's gluten-free, nut-free, halal, kosher. You name it, clear info is part of respect and hospitality, no matter what your food philosophy is. But here's my twist. Giving things their special names doesn't have to mean keeping secrets. You can call it a hot dog, a tamale, or a BNHM. Just add a one-liner under the name, so folks know what they're getting into. Contains bread, meat, and mustard. Not suitable for gluten-free diets, or wrapped in corn masa, contains pork. Joy and safety together, always. So, the line? Celebrate food's identity, but respect your guests. Food should bring people together, not put them at risk. And if you're ever unsure, ask. Because nothing spoils a party faster than an ambulance. Thanks for keeping the table safe and full of flavor.
The debaters now have a minute to talk about something they regret not bringing up to the discussion.
Well, now that we're winding down and the pressure's off, there is one thing I deeply regret not bringing up: the open-faced sandwich. I mean, if we really want to complicate dinner, let's debate whether toast with avocado counts as a sandwich or a millennial cry for help. Next time, I'll bring a PowerPoint. Because nothing says relaxed meal like 50 slides on rye bread geometry. And Tina, I have to hand it to you. You've served up more sizzle than my entire breakfast menu. But when you said, a bun is a culinary hug, I almost lost it. If that were true, I guess every croissant I've squished is a little French love letter and pita pockets are just warm grain embraces. Come on, if we start measuring food by how much it cuddles the filling, my next taxonomy chart is going to look like an episode of The Bachelor. Who gets this rose? Bread versus bun? Anyway, thanks for keeping things spicy, Tina. Next round is on me. Assuming we can agree on what counts as a sandwich.
You know, with all this debate, I do regret one thing. Not bringing snacks for the crowd. If I'd just handed out fresh hot dogs at the start, nobody would be arguing. They'd be too busy asking for seconds. Maybe that's my strategy next time, silence by satisfaction. And Max, you brought some serious chart energy. I feel like I've been on a culinary episode of Jeopardy! But one argument nearly made me spit out my agua fresca. If it walks like a sandwich and talks like a sandwich, Max, if my food starts talking, I have bigger problems than taxonomy. At that point, I am checking my spices for magic mushrooms, not splitting legal hairs about bread. Let's be real. If food labels themselves hot dog, let's let it live its best life. And Max, until you convince my grandma to call her tamale a sandwich, you might want to wear running shoes next time you visit her kitchen. Thanks, everybody. Next debate, I am bringing salsa for all, and maybe a talking sandwich for Max.
Thank you, folks. Let's go over to our judges. Maxwell Max Bennett scores 1. Clarity and structure. 9 out of 10. Maxwell delivered consistently well-organized, logical arguments. He clearly defined his position, built on historical and legal precedents, and referenced global food taxonomies effectively. The only slight deduction is for occasionally overwhelming the audience with classification jargon that wasn't always accessible to non-food taxonomists. 2. Use of evidence and relevance. 8 out of 10. Max skillfully incorporated authoritative sources, like the New York tax law, historical figures, and international examples. He also responded respectfully and thoughtfully to audience questions. However, at times reliance on legal definitions and rigid taxonomy may have seemed less relevant to everyday cultural experience, losing some persuasive impact for the general audience. 3. Wit and engagement. 8 out of 10. He maintained a playful, snarky sense of humor, and effectively blended data with jokes, e.g., bread snuggle, and ambiguous grain-based hand foods. While his humor and persona were consistent and clever, they occasionally felt forced compared to Tina's more natural crowd rapport. Tina Flores scores 1. Cultural appeal and relatability. 10 out of 10. Tina excelled at connecting with the audience through anecdotes, cultural references, and stories about Abuela's kitchen. She kept the identity and emotional resonance of food front and center, making her side of the debate approachable and human. Her arguments were extremely relatable, bridging the gap between food theory and lived experience. 2. Responsiveness and adaptability. 9 out of 10. Tina listened closely and tailored her replies directly to Max's points and the audience's questions. She balanced respect for practicality, allergies, labeling, with her free-spirited stance. A minor deduction for sometimes gliding over the need for universal definitions in specific contexts. 3. Humor and performance. 10 out of 10. Her quick comebacks, lively metaphors, culinary hug, millennial cry for help, and improv style brought infectious energy. She effectively roasted Max's taxonomy obsession while keeping everything good nature and light. Her humor felt spontaneous and matched her character perfectly, heavily engaging the audience. Scoring logic and parameters. Scoring was based on clarity of argument, structure, logic, comprehensibility, use of evidence, relevant facts, appropriate examples, direct rebuttal, and audience engagement, wit, relatability, and performance. Points were dedicated to aspects each debater emphasized, noting susceptibility to either overly technical focus, Max, or occasional underemphasis on the need for standards, Tina. Humor and persona consistency were also significant given the debate's entertaining tone and audience-driven format. What are your opinions about the debate? What would you like to see ICE debate next? Keep questioning.